A reading from Luke. For the people of ancient Israel, during the time of Jesus, it felt like the world was about to end. The oppression by the Roman Empire was so severe that people were dying of corporal punishment, starvation, or the constant quashing of rebellion, all in the name of peace. So Luke 12, from 32 to 40. Do not be afraid, little flock, for it is your Creator's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give alms. Make purses for yourselves that do not wear out, an unfailing treasure in heaven, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Be dressed for action and have your lamps lit. Be like those who are waiting for their master to return from the wedding banquet, so that they may open the door for him as soon as he comes and knocks. Blessed are those slaves whom the master finds alert when he comes. Truly, I tell you, he will fasten his belt and have them sit down to eat, and he will come and serve them. If he comes during the middle of the night or near dawn and finds them, blessed are those slaves. But know this, if the owner of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have let his house be broken into. You also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church. Thanks be to God.
Thank you, Sarah. So before I begin this sermon, I want to do a trigger warning, because I'm going to be talking about some acts of violence in Israel and Palestine, threats against the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, and post-traumatic stress disorder. I promise the whole sermon won't be super heavy, so please don't leave now. I promise. There's a spiritual message that I want to share with you all, but prepare yourself. So many of you know that I used to work in Israel and Palestine. It started back in 2008 when I went on a citizen delegation with the Compassionate Listening Project. It was a group started by the Jewish American peacemaker Leah Green, and she started this project of bringing Israelis and Palestinians together to do compassionate listening. So she would usually take a group of maybe 20 people there, and eventually she has Israeli and Palestinian facilitators that she would work with, and would take groups around, used to go to Gaza back when that was allowed, pre-2006, but also through the West Bank and Israel. And these citizen delegations have continued till last year even, and there's another one planned later this year, if you can imagine. So in 2008, I went on a trip to be a part of this, because I'm a lifelong pacifist, and I thought the best way to understand the Israel-Palestine conflict was to go and really meet with people. And before I went, I'd read a lot about it, and I'd taken 2 years of Arabic classes, so I knew a little bit of Arabic. But we were traveling around there and meeting with people, with the goal being to listen to their life stories and to try to get them to meet with one another. But on that first trip in 2008, we were staying with various people. And one of the families we were staying with was a Palestinian family with a grandmother, a mother, and 2 little girls. And on that trip, they were killed by Israeli settlers. And let's see, this is why I had a trigger warning. And our group was extremely traumatized by this. Most of us who were on that trip stayed in touch and are still in touch today. And I came back, and at the time I had a Jewish boyfriend whom I couldn't talk to about the situation, and we broke up over it. And I decided I wanted to work for the Compassionate Listening Project because I really believed in the kind of peacemaking work we were doing on the ground. So I moved from New Jersey to Seattle, and I started working with them. And I wanted to bring more people there. And so then after that, I would co-lead these trips with my Israeli co-facilitator, who's also a pacifist, and whom I'm still good friends with today. And on subsequent trips, nothing as terrible as what happened that first time happened, But we had settlers throw rocks at our group. We had settlers throw bags of feces and dump bleach on us. And we were in Jerusalem at the bus station when Hamas planted a bomb there, and the bomb went off. And luckily our group was okay, but one UK citizen was killed on that trip. And so Yael and I have post-traumatic stress disorder. And so this is something that I've had since that first trip in 2008. And so for folks, I don't know how much you all know about PTSD or chronic PTSD. Mine became chronic because I kept going back. And I had and still have today what's called survivor's guilt. So a lot of feeling of how can I live here in my nice life here in Vancouver when there's so much violence and so much going on with loved ones there. And this is very common for folks who've done activist work in that area. And so some of the symptoms of PTSD is trouble sleeping. I used to grind my teeth at night, so I had to wear a mouth guard for years. Lots of nightmares. And I would frequently dissociate. So I would, situation normal, and I would see something that would remind me of the violence. So one of my triggers was graffiti, because there was a lot of graffiti there in particular ways, threatening violence, and then acting on that violence. And so I remember one time being in a grocery store, and I used the washroom, and I closed the washroom door and turned around, and there was graffiti on it. And it sent me into a PTSD attack. And I have no memory of the next 20 minutes. I sort of became aware of myself when I was in my car about 20 minutes later. And one time I walked into traffic because I had seen graffiti, and I would dissociate and have what's called a flashback. So it was quite serious. And when I wasn't on these trips in the Middle East, I would come back to Seattle, and I would talk a lot about Israel-Palestine and try to educate people on the situation. And I got more and more involved into interfaith. And so I met my mentor, Reverend Stephen Greenbaum, who's in the Jewish tradition, and his mentor, Sheikh Jamal Rahman, is in the Sufi tradition. And I thought that was really amazing, having a Jewish mentor who'd studied with a Muslim mentor and working with both of them. And so we would do these interfaith programs. And I would largely work out of what's called MAPS, the Muslim Association of Puget Sound, which is the largest mosque in Washington state. And they're lovely there. They're so wonderful, extremely open and involved in interfaith. And they would have attacks at the mosque all the time when I was there. This was about 2016, 2017. So a brick was thrown through the window. We had bomb threats all the time. Our sign was destroyed by people with sledgehammers. And then we got people in the community to help us build a new one with messages from the community, which was so lovely. And then the same people came back and destroyed that sign. And it was an ongoing thing. And I was pregnant with my son, our son at the time. And so my husband and I said, it's not safe to raise our kids here. My husband's Muslim, as many of you know. And so we ended up moving here to Canada. And in general, we have felt much more safe here. But in 2019, there was an attack in New Zealand. I don't know how many folks remember this. This was the El Nor Mosque attack in Christchurch, New Zealand, where someone had flown from Australia to New Zealand and then went into a mosque and killed 51 people. And to me, the idea that you could be in a relatively safe, open country like New Zealand and still have to fear attacks from people from another country really freaked me out. And so I went into a state of hypervigilance that lasted for about 2 weeks. And so that means for about 2 weeks, I couldn't hardly sleep at all. And so I was on constant high alert. And this was finally what made me decide that I had to do something about this, because it was very bad for my health. It's very bad for parenting. And you can't be present in your life if you're always fearing an attack and think an attack is going to happen at any time, and you're scanning exits. This isn't a healthy way to live. And so I ended up finding a therapist that specializes in PTSD. And I've worked with her since then, since 2019. And she's wonderful. And I've done lots of different kinds of therapy, but the main one, the one I strongly recommend, is the eye movement one, EMDR. And it's this very strange thing where she'd say, I remember our first session, we were gonna work on this. She said, okay, close your eyes and tell me about the worst part of the worst story. And I was a little like, I'm paying you for this, really? I don't wanna do that. That's literally the opposite of what I wanna do. I wanna be safe. I don't wanna relive all of this. I wanna be safe. But she said, no, we have to work on this. And so we would do that. So I would see her in the beginning, it was 3 times a week. And I still sometimes go for follow-up appointments as needed, as you can imagine, the last couple years. It's been needed a little bit with what's going on now. But to go and to really work through every bad thing that happened, and every time I felt afraid, and every incident and each thing, and to piece through it. And the way I described it is it's kind of like before I used to suddenly see something that would remind me of this, and I would be on a roller coaster, and I would just, no matter what I was doing with my day, suddenly I'm on this roller coaster, and it's exhausting, and I'm reliving the whole thing, and I have no control over it. But by doing this work, now it's like something happens, and I see that I'm about to get onto the roller coaster, and I can decide not to. And that's amazing. I didn't used to have that option. And so highly, highly recommend EMDR if that's something that could be beneficial for you. And so I give you that backstory to let you know that I know a little bit about hypervigilance and being ready no matter what comes. And so today, if folks had read the newsletter, and we come to the present time, last week we held our Pride service, and it was wonderful. Jeff shared a very important message about growing into loving ourselves and being true to who we are in the world. And others shared some thoughtful messages about welcome and inclusion. And we even sang a Lady Gaga song. And who doesn't love a church service where you sing Lady Gaga, right? So many thanks to Sabriel and them for that. And it was beautiful. And then many folks joined in the Pride Parade afterwards. And it was wonderful. It was a joyful, wonderful day. Well, sadly, the recording from our service was picked up this past week by a right-wing group in the US, and parts of it were reshared there on what's essentially a hate farming site. So the folks seeing it there were outraged, which was the purpose of the people who were sharing it there. And it got lots of engagement and thousands of angry comments from people who hate those of us in the LGBTQ plus community. And as a reminder, I'm bisexual. I know I don't usually, I have a husband and children, so folks don't always remember that I'm in the queer community, but I'm also in the queer community. So basically we went viral this past week, which you think would be something good, but not when it's shared on a right-wing site. And suddenly we were inundated with angry messages and posts this past week. And so Jeff and JC have worked tirelessly this week to delete all the hateful comments from our recordings and online posts, to file a copyright infringement claim so that the right-wing group will have to remove us from their site, and to notify the police so that they can work to protect us online, and also so today they can patrol and just make sure we're safe here today. Because all of us, but especially those of us in the queer community, feel especially vulnerable right now. So many thanks to those who've worked so hard this week on that, and to the officers trying to help us be safe today. And if you noticed earlier when I was doing the land acknowledgement, I usually say this piece about those of you online might be on the land of other nations. Please share which nations you're on. And the reason I didn't say that is, at least for now, you can't share any comments on the website or on the YouTube, because we don't want to deal with all these angry people. So that's a little bit of the backstory. But coming to our scripture reading, we know that we're talking about a terrible time in history with this gospel reading, when the Roman Empire was taking over nations and ruling them in a horrible, brutal, unjust way. And as bad as things are today in many parts of the world, including in Gaza, but also Yemen, Ukraine, Sudan, and Myanmar, as well as various other places, unfortunately, things were just as bad then, if not in certain ways worse, during the time of the Roman Empire. Jesus and his followers were facing poverty, famine, ongoing war, and political and religious oppression. So that might ring a bell for us today. But this was Jesus' message. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid, little flock, for it's your Creator's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give alms. Make purses for yourself that will not wear out, an unfailing treasure in heaven, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So Jesus is telling them to sell what they own and give to those who are poorer than them, for they needn't worry about money. He's going to provide them purses that don't wear out. So what does that mean? What's a purse that won't wear out, or a resource that can't be stolen? What is an unfailing treasure in heaven? Well, clearly, he's telling them that the future is uncertain, but that doesn't mean that we should double down and try to protect ourselves all the time. That doesn't mean we have to take care to invest in the right places, to be frugal and to budget well, and have some canned goods and an earthquake kit ready. As helpful as those are, He's not telling them to okay, you got to get your finances in order. You got to build a bomb shelter. You got to hunker down. You got to be alert at all times. He's not saying it in that way. But he says, you must also be ready. So he's not saying become a prepper and do what you can to protect yourselves. But instead, he's saying, give what you have abundantly. Trust in the Lord. Do not be afraid. This is a hard message for us. And I know as I was just sharing, my hypervigilant brain can be really hard where you want to be safe. You want to kind of do all the things, right? So it's very easy to go to that place where you say, okay, if I say the right things, if I eat the right things, and if I have the right friends, and if I go to the right schools, and if I don't post these things online, and if I don't say these other things, and if I'm very careful, and then I'll be safe, and everything will work out. But that's called the just world fallacy. The just world fallacy is the belief that there's a correct way to do things, and then the world is just. And so then you'll be okay. But unfortunately, that's not true. So maybe I should have put the trigger warning here. But unfortunately, life isn't fair. And it doesn't work like that. As unfortunate as all the comments are this week, 2 years ago, we had a similar thing where I had talked about gay marriage and supporting gay marriage. And we had a bunch of people who were mad then. But then there are other queer-affirming congregations that maybe don't get hate. Or you don't even have to be speaking to that. You could be speaking to other things, and you'll get hate. So I don't want the takeaway to be, okay, we have to be ready. So that means we shouldn't stand for marginalized people, because we're learning that if you stand for marginalized people, that means that people will come back at you. So we have to double down and protect ourselves and not say anything that's going to upset anyone. The sad thing is if people are going to be upset, they're going to be upset anyway. And the important thing is that we not let go of our values. So when we're in that kind of hyper-vigilant state where we kind of double down and feel like we need to protect ourselves, we can't feel joy. We can't be present for our friends and family when we're filled with anxiety. Our bodies can't be healthy if we never let them rest. And we can't live into our values and purpose in the world if we're paralyzed with fear that others aren't going to agree with us and they're going to be upset. So instead, what do? So how do we really get ready for God's kingdom? We feel the fear and we do it anyway. We act kindly even when others are not kind. And we practice generosity with our money and resources, even if we don't have an abundance of resources ourselves. We love our neighbors, even if they're jerks. We love ourselves, even if our neighbors don't love us, and even if society has told us that we're not lovable or tried to convince us there's something wrong with us. Tama said earlier, love is at the center. So we live as though love is at the center. We don't live as though we're at the center, because we can never be hyper-vigilant enough. There's nothing you can do to protect yourself at all costs. And if you try to live that way, you're not really going to live. You're going to harm yourself. You're going to get sick. You're not going to be present for the people around you. It's going to be ugly. I know, because I lived that. And then I went to therapy for years to unlive that. So don't do that. Learn from me. Don't be like me. Don't do that. You got to just trust that love is at the center, no matter what. Last year when I was hiking the Camino, I would read a poem every morning before starting the walk. And this poem by Rainer Marie Rilke kept coming back to me, became a kind of ongoing meditation for me as I went. It's called Go to the Limits of Your Longing. It says, God speaks to each of us as God makes us, then walks silently with us out of the night. These are the words we dimly hear. You sent out beyond your recall. Go to the limits of your longing. Embody me. Flare up like a flame and make big shadows that I can move in. Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final. Don't let yourself lose me. Nearby is the country they call life. You'll know it by its seriousness. Give me your hand. So I hope we can take hands together. Let's hold hands together here as a community and trust that no matter what we're facing, either in our own private lives or here as this community, that we're never alone. Thanks be to God.